What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Coach Black, your internet relationship and breakup coach. Today's topic: your ex will only feel the loss later. Now, for some reason, this video was on my heart to make today. I'm not sure why. And, maybe you're in a dark place right now. You're alone in the middle of the wilderness. I hope this video brings you some sort of hope. If your life is feeling very uncertain right now or turbulent, maybe you're going through a divorce, and maybe you just went through a devastating breakup, and no one around you understands what you're dealing with, and you're stuck processing and trying to understand why is this happening to you. I want to promise you, everything that you go through is for your improvement. And I truly believe that, regardless of what happens between you and your ex. So if you're in a place where you're not feeling like anyone cares about you, you're not feeling like there's any hope, and you want to throw in the towel, you just want to give up, it's my job to give you another towel and say, keep going. It's times like this that me personally, I tend to lean on spirituality. And again, regardless of what you believe in, whether you believe in Jesus Christ or whether you're just a spiritual person, I think, when you start to realize and learn that a lot of things that happen in life are out of your control, you can finally let go and allow life to kind of unfold as it's supposed to. Now, in this video, we're going to talk mainly from a scientific perspective. So even though I'm someone who leans heavily into spirituality, and you hear that in like some of my videos, not all of them, I think I've been on a very interesting journey this year, kind of leaning back into my faith. So I think that's coming through in some of my videos. But again, I want to base a lot of these concepts in science so you can understand how your ex's brain is working, but also coming to you from a place of letting go, not forcing things, and understanding that you are someone who is deserving of love. And there are a bunch of people around you, your friends, family, me personally, in this channel, there's people watching the videos, support you and care about you, right? So take a break, relax, watch this video, and I hope that you find it helpful. Without further ado, let's just jump into it. Now, I was reading a book the other day called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, and he talked about a couple of concepts that are extremely fascinating. And it's a good book overall, but again, these concepts are so powerful for understanding the human mind and how we make choices and decisions. And I want to show you how your ex's brain is kind of going to work in your favor as time passes by, if you can only be strong and stay in no contact. This is extremely important. Okay, so one of the concepts that the book talks about is system 1 versus system 2 thinking. And the easiest way to explain this is, you have to understand that thinking in of itself, or making choices and decisions, actually consumes a lot of energy. Now, the way your brain and the way your body is wired, it's wired to be efficient, right? And so, when you eat and you consume calories, those calories are burned and then transported to different parts of your body for different bodily functions. And again, thinking can be one of the places where you're consuming a ton of energy. Like, the brain is like a superpower in the body. And so because of this, you're wired in such a way that you can make quick and snap judgments and decisions from a system 1 mode of thinking. Now, let me give you an example. If someone throws a ball at you, imagine if you had to sit there and process for hours to figure out how to solve this problem. You're going to end up getting hit, right? You need to be able to make a rash, quick judgment and decision based on, previous experience or your knowledge about projectiles and what will likely happen if that ball came in contact with your face, right? So from that point of view, you make a decision from a system one perspective, which is I need to duck and move out of the way so I don't get hit. So system one is about quick, fast choices and decisions, and it doesn't consume a lot of energy. Now, system two is a more involved process where you have to go into deep thinking and taking in all the information before coming up with the choice and decision. And this is usually for harder problems. So if I told you to calculate 25 times 36, right, it's going to take your brain some time. Okay, maybe I need a pen and paper, or I need a calculator, or it's something you need to process a little bit deeper. Now, for most of the things that you experience on a day-to-day basis, your brain is going to be leaning heavily into system one. Now, the problem with this is that because these choices are based on short-term thinking, they're based on rash decisions, it can lead us to make bad choices at times. Our memory is not always pulling from the right place, and sometimes you can make assumptions, you can make judgments that aren't actually in your favor. And he gives a ton of examples about these things. Now, I want you to think about this perspective from your ex. So one of the things that's going to happen when they break up with you, they're going to experience what's called recency bias. Now, the reason why recency bias happens is because usually, most times when someone's breaking up with you, they have formed a perspective and a judgment about you based on the historical context of the relationship. Most times, the relationship has kind of gone south. Things are mostly negative. And a lot of times, maybe your ex started pulling away from you emotionally. Maybe they started to neglect your feelings. They weren't as kind and as loving as they were before. And when they did this, most people react adversely. Maybe you got angry, maybe you got emotional, you started chasing, you started begging, started fighting with them. So in most cases, your ex's recent experience of you is most likely negative. So this is why when they break up with you, they go into the relief phase and they're happy about this because their perspective of you is negative. So they think leaving you is a net positive. They're happy about it. Now, before we go any further, if you are enjoying this video and if it is helping you gain a better understanding of your relationship and your ex, please do me a favor. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the future videos that I put out. I want to continue to add value to your life, to support you as you're going through this breakup. We're going to talk about concepts usually based in science, and these are well-researched ideas that'll help you understand the mind of your ex and also your mind, and so you can process the breakup better. And from time to time, there will be insights on spirituality, attachment styles, and again, I believe this will tremendously help you on your breakup journey. So again, if you appreciate that, please do me a favor, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. So now we understand most likely why your ex in the short term is going to be feeling fine and why they don't feel that sense of loss, because they do not care as much because they feel like they are making the right decision. But this is system one mode of thinking. They're thinking more from a short-term perspective, judging you based on your recent mistakes. Now, what happens over time if you detach, if you learn to love yourself and appreciate and realize the things that you bring to the table. One of the things I always say is just because your ex has forgotten your value doesn't mean that you should. All right. One of my favorite quotes is from The Lion King when Simba goes into the, like the monkey leads Simba into some forest, and he looks into the water, and then he sees a reflection of his father, and then his father appears. All right, if you've watched Lion King, you know the scene I'm talking about, and what Mufasa says to Simba. He says, Simba, you have forgotten who you are. All right, you have forgotten me, and you have forgotten who you are, something like that, right? Because he was living much less than he was capable of living. And I think that that story is very interesting from the perspective of a lot of us, because you're heartbroken, because your ex has been unkind to you, because they discarded you. You have forgotten that you are a prize yourself. You have forgotten that they were lucky to be with you in the first place. So do not let this breakup crush you. So moving forward, right? Your ex goes out into the world. They're doing their thing. They're partying, but you're coming back to self. You're learning to love yourself again. You're realizing that the kingdom of heaven is within you. Like, you don't have to go outside of yourself to seek love, because everything that you're seeking is already inside of you. And your ex is only a reflection of how you feel about yourself. So the more you love yourself, the easier you'll be able to attract good new people into your life, including your ex. So you're focused on yourself, you're healing, you're starting to do better, but you're in no contact. What happens over time, now focusing on this second concept from the book that I want to talk about, he talks about the experiencing mind versus the remembering mind, and how there's always a distinct separation between those two ideas or concepts. And I'll explain it to you like this. A couple years ago, I ran a half marathon, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And I remember as I was running the half marathon, I started to feel this pain in my leg. And it started early, like maybe at around the second or third mile. And I remember feeling a pain in my leg, and then all of a sudden my body started itching. And I think there's something called a runner's itch. I can't explain exactly how this happens, and I think it has to do with your blood vessels. You can look it up, but it's extremely uncomfortable. So I'm kind of running / jogging and walking, but the whole time I remember wanting to quit. I remember wanting to just stop and walk off, because things have gotten, almost unbearable at this point. But I was like, you know what, I'm going to just keep on trucking. And I just kept on moving, but it was extremely unbearable in the moment. Now, at the end of the race, I remember crossing the finish line, and I actually was moving pretty fast. And, as I crossed the finish line, on the other side waiting for me were some of my closest friends, my family, the girl I was dating at the time. And I'm met with all these hugs and congratulations. And I remember being on this high. And one of the other things was that my pace was actually not as bad as I thought. It was one of the fastest paces that I've ever done the half marathon. And so that crowning achievement in that moment was so intoxicating, and it's something I'll never forget. And this is one of the reasons why currently I want to train for a full marathon. That high, that experience was one, unlike anything I've ever felt before. Now, the thing is, when I tell that story, most times I remember that experience as something positive. I remember that experience as, one of the crowning achievements of my life. And I actually have a medal somewhere in the house. And, I might post it later, but I actually have a medal for that race. And again, it was such a high that when I'm talking about the experience from the remembering mind, it's extremely positive. Now, the experiencing mind, actually thinking critically and going back to how I felt in the moment, it was maybe one of the worst feelings I'd ever been through. And this is the same thing that will happen to your ex, and a lot of people go through this, is the more space and time that you put between yourself and your ex through the breakup, so as weeks pass and you're in no contact, the experiencing mind and all the negative perception that they had about you starts to fade into the distance. And usually what they start to glamorize, or what they start to focus on, is the positives. They start to think about the highlight reel. And for a lot of people, you probably posted some of your highlights. So anytime they go into their phone or they're on Instagram and they're looking at old pictures, they're looking at these glamorized versions of the relationships from a more positive perspective. And this is when they start to feel the loss, because again, from that perspective of a holistic, happy, healthy place, which is usually the times that we start to remember, they start to feel a loss of that good time, a loss of the relationship and the bond that they had with you. You know, I've talked about on this channel losing my father, which is one of the hardest things that I've ever been through. But anytime I talk about my dad, I don't remember a lot of his negative characteristics, because obviously he's human. He was never perfect. Anytime I talk about him, it's always referencing the positive. This is exactly what happens to your ex when there's enough space and time. So your ex will feel the loss after all of the separation. Why? Because of the experiencing mind versus the remembering mind. We usually tend to remember things through rose-colored lenses. Now, sometimes that could be to our detriment, because I always say this: every relationship doesn't deserve to be fixed, but I'm just telling you what your ex will likely experience. Anyway, if you find this video helpful, again, please do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the future videos that I put out. If you have any thoughts, comments, questions, drop them down in the comment section below. If you want to talk to me about your situation and your breakup and you need support, click the first link in description. I'll be happy to work with you and kind of talk you through some ideas and how you should go about this breakup journey. Thanks again for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.